Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our special media coverage that will shed the light on the second Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership, which is being held in the Jordanian capital of Amman and being attended by a host of Arab leaders as well as international senior officials. Highlighting the importance of this event, the representative of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, may Allah protect him and bless him. His Highness Sheikh Ahmed Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, may Allah protect him, is heading the State of Kuwait's delegation to the key regional conference that it is also witnessing the attendance of the French President Emmanuel Macron. Obviously, the conference is part of Baghdad's diplomatic efforts to balance ties and relations with the Arab neighbors and widen the horizon of cooperation among allies in both regional and the international arenas. The second edition of the Baghdad Conference is being held in Amman amid great challenges facing Iraq, including food security, drug security, and energy security, as well as several challenges that go beyond the borders. Thus, regional and the international cooperation is needed to face these challenges. Earlier today, several leaders convened at the King Hussein Talal Center in the Dead Sea area. West of Amman attended the second Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership, affirming the role of Iraq as a pivotal player in the region while emphasizing its adoption of a positive balance policy in its foreign relations. The leaders and senior officials from the Arab and the international nations, including France, Jordan, Egypt, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and attending the Baghdad Conference in the show of solidarity and support for the Iraqi government and the people. Let us start with this report and come back with a very distinguished guest.
Participants of the second Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership convened in the Jordanian capital of Amman at the leadership level to show their support for Iraq and discuss challenges, common issues, and future prospects. The Arab neighbors expressed their appreciation for the efforts exerted by the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in holding and sponsoring this key conference, which has brought together leaders from the region and friendly countries and showed their support for the Iraqi government and people, while stressing the need to unify regional and international efforts in a way that positively reflects on the stability and security of the region. In return, Iraq has appreciated the coordinating role played by the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the French Republic in holding and attending this conference with an active participation. During the conference, the attendees delivered key statements welcoming the tireless Iraqi diplomatic efforts to reach a common ground at the regional and international level in order to strengthen political, economic, and security partnerships, adopt constructive dialogue, and consolidate understandings on the basis of common interests. They renewed their support for the Iraqi government's efforts to strengthen state institutions according to constitutional mechanisms and acknowledge that the region faces common challenges that require all Arab countries to deal with them on the basis of joint cooperation and mutual interest in accordance with the principles of good neighborliness, non-interference in the internal affairs of countries, and respects of national sovereignty. The participants praised Iraq's great efforts and sacrifices in its war against terrorism with the help of the international coalition, brothers and friends, and valued the Iraqi measures to achieve economic reforms that would encourage investments in various sectors, create an appropriate economic environment, and enhance the process of sustainable development. During the session, the leaders also stressed the need for continued cooperation in promoting health sectors and tackling the common health challenges and its impacts. It was also agreed on the necessity to enhance efforts with Iraq to deal with the challenges arising from water and food crisis, climate change, and global warming, in accordance with the relevant international agreements.
Welcome back. Now let me welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Jassim Qabazert, a prominent political analyst and engineering consultant who are very sincerely honored to be host right here in our studio, and we will shed the light on the latest development about the second Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership. Doctor, welcome again. It is very pleasurable honor, honestly, to be with you for the second time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Sir, you have heard the introduction that I gave on the beginning of this telecast. It's all about the cooperation and reviving the Iraqi people along with the government and how to help them as brother in the state of Kuwait along with the GCC members and other countries in the world. Correct. Now, how do you evaluate Kuwait's participation in such regional convention?
I believe any Kuwaiti automatically will vouch that Kuwait plays a pivotal role in the relationship in the immediate region, namely Kuwait, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the GCC countries. And the neighborhood relationship between Kuwaitis and Iraqis have always been, in the history, a very friendly on social, economical, and political fronts. Putting aside some of the disputes that we had before politically and militarily, at the end, both countries do hold in their heart respect for each other, and both nations, aside from governments actually, nations feel a special friendly relationship with each other. And Kuwait has always, in its role as a growing country, as an Arab country and part of the Arab League and part of the Gulf cooperation, has always contributed in any front it can, particularly nowadays when the challenges are very eminent and a bit different than when they are. So Kuwait has always had a special role in maintaining peace, tranquility, and also progressiveness for the region by playing its role properly with each party around us, especially with Iraq, where we have a land border and a sea border with them. And I believe that you don't need to really bring any proof. The proof speaks for itself. And we always follow the leadership in our country. And the leaders have always maintained this good neighborhood, as they call it, good neighborliness relationship, husn al-jawar. And the nations adopt this also, no matter what happens in disputes. So I believe Kuwait, with its present situation, will play an important role on many fronts, whether it is economical, political, geopolitical, and the fields of power, the fields of energy, many fields that you talk of nowadays, which is in our concern, food security and all these.
What about the significant conference for both countries, for Iraq and Kuwait? Do you think that it's going to improve it? You have mentioned about the good neighborly.
Yes.
Husn al-Jawar.
Yes.
Do you think it's going to take it to the different level? Do you think it's going to enhance the relationship? Not to mention because we have a relationship regarding the marriage and the kinship.
Yes, of course, I do believe that. If we go back a little bit in time, if we talk in 2018, Kuwait held an international conference for the rebuilding of Iraq. That itself was a starter of let's forget the past and let's move on. And it was a time where ISIS was, by the international coalition and the help of the different regional countries, to minimize their power and actually remove them from interfering. The conference at that time, plus the conference which happened in Algiers in November 2022, and in this conference, there is a common denominator in all these conferences where Kuwait always asks for stability, general stability in this region. So this particular conference actually acts like a testimonial, like the countries watch and certify that Kuwait and Iraq's relationship are going to be better from now on. So they're going to be watched by the community in this conference, with the presence of France, an international part of this conference, which basically you can say represents the European Union. And they have a direct involvement in our region in many different aspects. So this particular conference will actually be like a certification that whatever the three conferences have been going towards are going to be implemented and to be actually becoming a reality rather than a concepts or ideas.
Now, you mentioned that Kuwait is kind of the leader of in this partnership of the whole situation about helping the Iraqi people as well as the government. Do you think that the partners are doing the same thing? Do you think that Kuwait is also the leader of the whole humanitarian act in the world?
It tries without attempting to be the leader. Kuwait always has been a very giving country.
That's correct.
They don't go and brag about what they do.
Like a show off.
A show off. We never do this. And this is very eminent during the occupation of Kuwait by Iraq, where Kuwait in the international community
back in 1990,
it never went there and says, look what I did.
No.
People themselves vouched for what Kuwait had done. So this attitude actually gives Kuwait a special credibility and respect to believe that when Kuwait wants to take some positive step towards any kind of moderation, bilateral discussions to resolve political, geotechnical, geophysical problems in the region, even to become as mediators in any kind of local, regional, and sometimes international disputes. So, therefore, Kuwait will continue to be like this. We know of our leadership that this is a policy they do, and the nation is behind them, especially the National Assembly.
The state of Kuwait always stressed the need to fulfill and to be the brother, to stand by the Iraqi people along with the Iraqi in general, to support the sovereignty. What do you say about that?
It is a must, actually. We are told by our leadership that no matter what, the stability of both nations will spill over the stability of the people and their goodwill and living in a better life for themselves, and to be able to provide strong grounds for the future generation to be able to live a better life and suitable life later on. So this particular relationship between the two countries showed, I remember very well, immediately after the removal of Saddam Hussein's regime. Kuwait opened its borders immediately with Iraq, and an influx of food, supplies, medication went in big trailers and big convoys from Kuwait to the border of Basra, and started distributing it freely to whoever was available. And Kuwait also created a special task force to cater for anybody who wanted to go across the border. Refugees or even businessmen, and even to take, for instance, doctors and medication to help the Iraqi people across the border. And this was very well orchestrated by the Kuwait government and a special body under the directorship of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Defense. So this showed always the progressive attitude Kuwait has had towards helping Iraq in any way it can.
Dr. Ghabzar, it's time for you to take a break, because I know you're out of breath and we have a long night ahead of us.
I'm willing.
And plus we have a lot of phone calls to take right here in the studio. Get ready for that. But
Thank
it's
you.
time for you to take a break.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, come back with us after this break. Welcome back to KTV2 Studio. The Minister of Information, and warm welcome also to Dr. Jassim Qabazart, who is joining us tonight. And before we go back to our question, I would like to take this phone call from Mr. Hussein Al Fartoushi, an engineering consultant and political analyst from the Republic of Iraq. Good evening, sir, and thank you so much for being with us.
Good evening, sir, and you welcome, and all my brothers, Kuwaitis, and all your audience, welcome.
The Iraqi government affirms huge potentials in terms of financial, of human resources, as well as a second and a sound investment environment. How can this key conference translate the Iraqi statement into reality? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you well. At the beginning, I would like to say that the Iraqi government is working hardly to join the efforts with the neighboring countries as well as the brothers in the Gulf states. Iraq is a sovereign state. It's working side by side with the neighboring countries to secure the stability and security in the region. For that, Iraq has the resource as well as has the natural resources. It's all gonna to be happen when the country stability be on the line. It means the government progress with democracy and with the peace that must be established in the Middle East. You know, the country, Iraq, it had been through a very critical times. You know, ISIS, there is Al-Qaeda, and many problems moved through. Iraq currently, a sovereign state, is working closely with its allies, especially the Gulf states, the Kuwaiti states. You know, the Iraqi Prime Minister of Iraq, the first visit ever he made it to visit Kuwait. It means that the Kuwait represents very important step in the Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shah al-Sudani diplomatic efforts in order to increase the diplomatic working on shaping the new future and the new era in the Middle East.
The second Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership reflects the importance of reaching solid solutions that safeguard the sovereignty of Iraq and prevent foreign elements from interfering in the Iraqi internal matters. What is the role of the Arab countries in preserving the sovereignty of Iraq and its people?
As we have seen from the conference, many Arab leaders, including His Highness the Kuwaiti Prime Minister, reaffirmed on the strong relationship between Kuwait and Iraq. He mentioned the importance of this relationship. It means Iraq is dependent on the Arab countries because they formed like a strong ally for the future of Iraq, for the future of the next generation. You know, Iraq is a country but is not divided from it's surrounded. It belongs to the Arabian surrounded. It belongs to the Arabian Gulf. It belongs to the entire region. For that, the stability in Iraq represents stability in the entire region, as well as we have seen Iraq participated in Riyadh Summit, the Chinese Arabian Summit. It was successful because the Arabian leaders and the leaderships of Arab Gulf states are supporting the Iraqi government and the Iraqi people to achieve security, and it is the most important aspect it is the security and stability. Then moving forward, the Iraq sovereignty. It means the Arab states will never allow for any foreign countries to interfere in Iraqi internal issues. For that, all the statements came across from His Highness, the Kuwaiti Prime Minister, His Highness, the Saudi, His Highness, the Emirates, all together are saying the words, Iraq independency, it's most important, and Iraq security, stability, as well as important for that the country, I mean Iraq, should integrate its economy with its surroundings, like Kuwait, KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Jordanian, as well as the entire Arab world.
Mr. Hussein Al-Fartushi, thank you so much for being with us. Folks, you're still with us right here at KTV2. Jassim Al-Qabazart will be right with us right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back. As I said, that Dr. Jassim Qabazart is right here in our studio. We're still entertaining his companionship. Thank you so much for being
Welcome.
with us.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Okay, you heard our guest from Iraq, and
Yes.
he gave us a great idea about the situation, about the conference. And
Yes, right.
that was very enlightening.
Yes.
Now let's focus on you. We gave you a break, and I believe that you are well deserved for that.
Thank you.
So let's get on with it. What about the international factors like Ukrainian tension and oil prices issues and the inflation of the world? Everybody is suffering from that.
Yes.
How do you think that the state of Kuwait is going to mediate and also to be the quarterback of the whole situation?
Actually, it's not going to be just Kuwait's
It's
mission.
everybody's.
Actually, this conference, the conference, the presence of France there, to me, it has great significance politically and economically. What's happened, the events in Europe with Ukraine and Russia, has opened up a Pandora's box.
Oh, that's dangerous.
That's dangerous. Unknown things all of a sudden sprung up. It showed how the immediate region got affected by this war from a food security point of view and from economical security and from even trade relationships. Well, the fluctuations of the currencies, let's say the catastrophic effect on human life, the humanitarian problems, what comes with every war.
The devastation, don't forget
Devastation,
that.
of
Yes.
course, and this is going to have its impact, if not directly on us, it will come later, just because we have to help the suffered people from a humanitarian point of view for them to come back to their own usual lives. So we're not out of this as a region, but we have to watch it, and what we can see right now, that food security, medical security, and even trade has become directly affected by this. And this means that we have to be prepared on how to attend to these problems. This conference, I'm sure, if it's not stated on its agenda, but side meetings between the heads of states, or let's say the representatives who are prime ministers and so forth, are going to meet with France and with any other nation which has relationship
they have
with
enough
Europe.
influence to, steer the ship, go back to safety?
They have to.
They have to.
They have to, because nowadays it is evident that countries cannot operate on their own.
No.
There is an interwoven relationship which keeps springing up with any kind of a political problem or dispute, which sees countries in different regions are being affected directly by this. So I believe that the impact of what's happening in Ukraine has already affected our trade business in this region, and I don't think that we're going to be out of it unless we are ready on how to attend it to any kind of problem that comes from there. So there is a great emphasis made in this conference by all missionary statements that's been made, and that is, we want stability. We don't want interference in others' local business by any outside countries, forces, or whatever. Get rid of any kind of source of terrorism, whether funding or groups, and pay attention to maintaining the safety of the environment and providing enough fuel and gas, power, energy for the people, and also the medical and food security. So they are all talking about this, and that doesn't come from nowhere. They are feeling the importance of addressing these issues.
Every conference, every situation, it has its own obstacles and challenges.
Yeah.
No doubt that this situation here, there is some kind of challenges that are facing the nations. We're talking about the GCCs and the neighboring people around the world. What exactly that this conference going to put aside of the differences and face these challenges and face these obstacles in order to move on with our lives?
Listening to our Prime Minister, Sheikh Ahmed, our Prime Minister,
okay.
He was very specific in his call, and I believe it's important. These are pivotal matters. He talks about non-interference into the local affairs of each other's countries. In other words, respecting the sovereignty of each country. We have a border, marine border,
yes,
maritime
correct.
border with Iraq, and it's called at Station 162.
Station
162. He mentioned it in his speech.
He did.
That we like to close this file. In other words, we've almost finished with Iraq with any border disputes, and we're left with this, and inshallah it will be resolved. As you know, Kuwait has built a Mubarak al-Kabir port, and the city of Al-Harir, which is the Silk City, is on its way. There is a pan-Arab railroad, which they've been talking about since the 80s. And this comes up, and it has to do something with the Silk Road, which is going to come across Iraq, Syria to the Mediterranean. And you're talking about the railroad line between Kuwait and Iraq, which has been discussed on many occasions before, and the border dispute was the problem in the time of Saddam. So if you look at these issues, Kuwait is putting its finger, focusing on 2 or 3 or 4 of these things which he believes are pivotal and need to be addressed. And I believe these points, he wouldn't bring them up unless he feels positive about what's happening. And Kuwait always has been a moderate nation in all its relationships. So maintaining this, being a moderate nation, is going to be the safeguard of this.
Dr. Jassim, it's always a pleasure. I don't mean to interrupt, but we have a phone call from Dr. Hira Al-Mchemi. If you just stick around, we'll come back to you.
Okay, we'd like to hear her.
It's a pleasure. Now let us welcome Dr. Hira Al-Mchemi, an academic and political analyst. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's a great pleasure to be part of this discussion, as a matter of fact.
Ma'am, discussion about the second Baghdad Conference for the Cooperation and Partnership. The first thing, the participation of the second Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership agreed that the main goal, and it's one of this main goal of this year key event, is to continue the momentum that began in the first Baghdad Conference that was held in the Iraqi capital back in August 2021. Do you sense the progress in addressing and tackling regional matters?
Definitely, as we all know that even before 2021, Kuwait participation, as a matter of fact, in this conference is essential. Basically, because Kuwait, the Iraq Reconstruction Conference, the donor conference, it was Kuwaiti initiative. As a matter of fact, Kuwait put a lot of effort in order to gather this international will in order to support Iraq to regain its normal role in this area as a peacemaker. There's a lot of issues between Kuwait and Iraq that really need to be solved. Kuwait, in fact, even in the northern city, the Kuwaiti future is lay ahead in that area. So Kuwait definitely is part of it, and I think the Kuwaiti participation is essential. We also aware about that Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development and the Fund for the Reconstruction of Areas Affected by Terrorist Operation in Iraq signed a grant agreement of 85 million in 2019 as part of a total grant of 100 million announced by the state of Kuwait during the donors conference and to support Iraq and contribute to covering humanitarian needs. Most of the services, as we know, including health, in a number of cities in Iraq were destroyed after the control of ISIS from 2014 until 2017. So there is now, as we also, it was announced that there is some of those projects was already constructed and was already completed as part of that grant. So we are pretty much having a lot of enthusiastic for these kind of regional cooperation meetings and conferences.
Dr. Mcheni, as several Arab countries are experiencing security and economic obstacles, what are the actions and the efforts needed to secure a better future for the Arab people?
Let's start with this with the context of the importance of Iraq and this conference that has a focus on Iraq. We really need, especially also, and this is even a regional, in fact, regional aims that everybody is working towards to implement this aims to prevent the use of land of Iraq or any Arabian land to launch any threat to neighboring countries. As Prime Minister of Iraq, Mohammed Sudani, mentioned that Iraq now is trying to distance itself from the policies of the Axis and calls of escalation. So these, I think, statements are very important for us. So in order to enhance these kind of contribution, there is a lot of issues that need to be implemented. Iraq security, water security, joint action to combat extremism. We also need to work in several areas, whether food security, energy, and all other areas that is in a mutual interest for the entire region. I think by implementing all these important issues, we can at that stage reach a regional cooperation mechanism that achieve integration, security, and stability in the region.
Dr. Mcheni, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Hala Al-Mchemi, an academic and political analyst from Kuwait. Thank you so much. Stick around. We'll come back right after this. Providing life necessities to neighboring friendly country, the Republic of Iraq is the great significance to the state of Kuwait's Red Crescent Society, KRCS, further translating the strong relations of the second countries. As part of the KRCS's ongoing campaigns and humanitarian programs, Kuwait sheds light on standing beside the people of Iraq with the aim of providing the essentials amid difficulties and circumstances, driving attention towards supporting the best suited path with regional and the international cooperation in helping Iraq. We have a report in this following report.
The state of Kuwait translates the true essence of unity, brotherhood, and humanitarian aspects as it continues to highlight the importance of providing food and energy security, drug security, humanitarian programs and initiatives, in addition to taking part in vital conferences on supporting the Iraqi Republic. Delving into Kuwait Red Crescent Society, or the KRCS of the state of Kuwait, it has opened 5 schools in the Kurdistan region in Iraq, which were set up for displaced Iraqi students, located in the city of Erbil, funded by the Society's campaign, Kuwait Next to You. Not only this, but the KRCS also worked to provide school supplies for the displaced, in addition to distributing approximately 20,000 school bags and office supplies to the displaced students. The first Kuwait school opened in the province of Erbil, as it was the first educational entity to open in the province, with a capacity of about 500 students and children. Moreover, under the umbrella of Kuwait Next to You campaign of the KRCS, 4 ambulances and medical equipment worth of $1.8 million were delivered to the neighboring Iraq. This initiative comes as part of Kuwait's continued support to the humanitarian necessities and was provided by the Association to the provinces of Anbar, Nineveh, Kirkuk, and Salah ad-Din. The initiatives reflect the fraternal cohesion between the state of Kuwait and the Republic of Iraq. The state of Kuwait is constantly eager to provide support to Iraq via meeting with senior Iraqi officials or other initiatives which help secure life necessities in the neighboring brotherly country.
Welcome back. Let's go back to our eminent guest in the studio, Dr. Jassim Qabazard. We have a lot to cover, and you were with us since the inception of this telecast. Always a pleasure to have you, Doctor.
It's my pleasure also.
Okay, in order for me to continue this dialogue, I would love from you to tell us exactly, without me asking you, what exactly that you are looking forward from this conference, in your own words.
I personally, a very practical person, I like to see any resolution that serves the well-being of our country, Kuwait, in relation to the region and vice versa, to be implemented actually, a follow-up program to be implemented. And all the conferences, the previous conferences that happened, their success depends on how well each country will stick to the agenda, will stick to the resolutions that came out, and how seriously they will actually implement. I understood from one of the conferences that they were going to make subcommittees to follow up the implementation of these resolutions. Now, with respect to our neighbor, our brothers, neighbors in Iraq, I would use the speech of our Prime Minister as a, let's say, diving board, to move forward about it. He mentioned something very important, that the GCC countries signed an agreement with Iraq to connect the electrical grid with the Iraqi government. That itself is an implementation of a major program. We all know how difficult now Iraq is how difficult is the electrical supply system, given some of the disturbances that happened, some of the sabotage work that was done beyond their control by the ISIS, by the people who have ill will towards Iraq. And naturally,
people who do not want to see this relationship be successful.
Be successful, exactly. And there are enemies that are fed by, the mercenaries, all kinds of. It's not an unknown issue, and that's why in their speeches they do stress that they have to stop, any kind of funding and protection or providing any kind of service for these groups, terrorist groups. So, therefore, the guidelines which our Prime Minister put is for me a good indication. Even if one item, such as the electrical grid, gets to be implemented, that's a plus. If they get the railroad connected, no doubt you can imagine the ease of communication, whether on commercial basis or social, people going back and forth. And Iraq is a country with a lot of touristic attractions. That
not only that, lots of resources.
Yes.
They have rivers, they have good soil, they have the greatest, the reservoir of the oil in the world.
Yes, of course, that's true. And these all need to be capitalized on properly and in an environment of security. Political security and physical security, let's say, and cooperation with the international community. The international community has also respect Iraq's growth program and not interfere with it and suck all that goodness and leave very little for the country. So this is where the regional international cooperation has to stick together and has to secure the progress and allow for the future generation to have something to live on.
Dr. Jassim Qabazat, I don't know about you, but I always enjoy conversing with you. This is the second time, and I hope that you come back with us once again.
Anytime, it's my pleasure.
Different events.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you all the time.
For the successful
this is your second
having.
house in the state of Kuwait.
Thank you very much.
Folks, this is the end of the lines. That brings us to the end of our special show that covered some essential parts of the second Baghdad Conference for the Cooperation and Partnership, hoping that you have enjoyed discussion with our views, with our dear guests from inside Kuwait and abroad, mainly in our guest, Dr. Jassim Qabazat, the political and analyst, engineer and consultant. Always a pleasure to have you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
This is the end of the line. Thank you so much for being with us. Until I see you again, take yourself, each other